How many of you have actually had a challenge with sharing or telling a story, specifically for your business or an organization for which you work? I'm Tina B, and I'm an intuitive communication coach. And I have found with so many clients that I've worked with that this is a constant challenge. Well, I want to lay out for you that your problem isn't the story, it's really the length. So I had a client I worked with a few months back who came to me challenged. They're in this world of work where they want to align their story, their financial money story, with the institution for which they work. And they're like, how do I bring those two together? Because all of us have a money mindset story where we learned how to budget, maybe we came from scarcity. And this particular client had a very robust story, and there were lots of parts and pieces, which can cause the squirrel function of so many things to share, that where do you even start? What do you share and what do you not? What's essential? And I worked with her in a way that was really focused in on what do you want the story to do for you, and what is the context, and overall how do you want it to land with your audience. And what I found is we really needed to create three versions of the story for this client. So let's lay this out. First of all of you have a story, and that's what you have to own within yourself. And you have to first, when you think about what the story is, I'm going to give you three specific tips that we're going to lay out so that you can do better with your story. The first of this is start backwards. Really think about what is the outcome that you want from this story, and what kind of impact do you want it to make on the audience that's listening? Because clearly you want people to listen to what you have to say. Is it you want to gain a new financial partner as a nonprofit? Is it that you want to cross promote with someone that you find interesting on social media and you are intrigued with that? Is it merely you want a connection with someone else at a networking event to sort of say, hey, this is what I'm about and would like to hear what you're about? Story does that. Ask yourself what it is you want the story to do for you. That is the first thing. So you have to think at the end in mind, sort of like an athlete, specifically a runner, where they know the length of space in which they have. Are they doing a marathon, a half marathon, a 100-meter dash? They train differently for the different types of races, because obviously marathon takes a lot more endurance, whereas the 100-meter dash, it's like sprint, fast, hard, go. And that's what we think about with the story. So first of all, that's my first tip is ask yourself, what is it you want the story to do for you, and look at the end game. Start backwards and work your way through it. Tip 2, context impacts content. This is essential. Where are you speaking? To whom are you speaking? And how much time do you have? This is where I love the idea of what Rick Rubin talks about when we do the creative process, because all of you are creative and stories are creative. They transport people's heads to the audience's hearts as you take them on a journey. You want creative constraints. That's where the specific container comes into play, where you don't want it to be all free for all, because that won't land. You have to tether your balloon, right? And when I think of constraints, it's context. So are you speaking in a really big formalized room on stage with a microphone? That is a level of formality that's vastly different if you walk into a sea of people and you're doing one-on-one conversations. Two very different functions for story and contexts. Also, audience is different. If you are speaking to potential clients in an audience at a conference or workshop, that's a different beast than if you're speaking to a brand new person that you're just talking about your business to. And then the last is the time factor. This is something I think that is the hardest for my clients to work through, is how much time do I have? We tend to overestimate time, and I've been guilty of this as well. I've been a 2-time TEDx speaker, and they always want your talks under 18 minutes. And I found that the trend is even now 12 minutes or less. So time is essential. And when I worked with a creative collaborator, a storyteller who facilitated storytelling shows, best stories are 10 minutes or less. Get to the point, have those beautiful sensory details and emotions, but don't drag it on. I found one of two extremes happens. Either my clients drag it on, tell too much, and get lost in the details, and then it doesn't become impactful or transformative. The lesson gets lost, because that's what story really is all about, is the lesson learned. What do we learn from this moment in time? The human experience. Or it's the other extreme where it's just not enough details. It's just too short. This is where my last tip is. The problem is the time. You need to create 3 versions of your story. The longer the story, the more formal the experience, the more spaciousness you have. Think of your long version as that keynote. If you are requested to speak for an hour to 500 to 1,000 people, you're on a main stage, you have a mic, you have a captive audience. They've chosen, generally speaking, to pay to go there for a specific lesson and generally, growth of some sort in their mindset and something that they can apply. That's where you can do the 10 to 12 minute story, because then that's your hook. Maybe that's the streamline. Even in a TED Talk that's 18 minutes or less, 65% or so of a TED Talk is story. Multiple stories or a general story that really was the impetus for that person's new business adventure, their life-changing event, what they experienced overall. So that's the long version, and that's where I would say you start first. That's your foundation, the keynote length story of about 10 to 12 minutes. The second length is the workshop level story. That's your medium, under 10 minutes. I would say probably 3 to 5 minutes, and it depends again on the workshop and how deep you want to go. Stories are beautiful to illustrate points, and whether it's you're hooking your audience to start the workshop or you're illustrating a main idea, that generates listening, insight, and impact. And that's where you have to decide how much you go into it. Workshops generally are anywhere from 1 hour to full days. I've done wide ranges of lengths of time. Again, that's a constraint. So think in terms of how much time you have. If you have a 1 hour workshop, you're going to want to slice and dice to a 3-ish minute story and get to it. The last length is your short version. That would be your elevator pitch, your networking experience, where it's 1 to 2 minutes max. Even on social media, what we're finding is with TikToks, as well as even YouTube's, we're getting the shorts. People's attention spans are short, so get to it quickly. So when you think of story, you are a storyteller. Note the creative constraints that's going to make the biggest and the best impact. So first, remember, it's start with the end in mind. Go backwards. What's the impact and outcome you want from the story? Then that impacts the next piece of ask yourself, what is the context? That helps you create your content. And then the last piece is the length. What kind of event are you going to? How much time do you have? And always, I would say, be concerned about how long you speak, and time yourself, because we have different misconstrued ways of which we think of time. If this resonated to you, I would love to extend an invitation. I have a wonderful workshop coming up because so many of us get confused with our communication. And it's Wednesday, April 29th, 11 to noon Central Standard Time. That's Wednesday, April 29th, 11 to noon Central Standard Time. And it's from confusion to clarity. Communicate so people lean in. And this is in essence focusing on message. And it doesn't have to be just story. It could be conversations that are crucial for your business, whether it's a performance evaluation for your employee or a potential client that you want to intrigue to work with you. This workshop is for you. So I want to extend that invitation, and I'll put the link in the chat for you to check it out and register. And in the meantime, remember, you are all storytellers. And when you know what impact you want to make, you lead with the outcome in mind. You then craft it based on the context and go with those creative constraints at the length of time that you have. you will then connect with your audience, because story is the biggest, best persuasive tool that we have. And with that in mind, let the story do the work. I'm Tina B, and remember to be you and be true. Until next time, check me out at tinab.com. That's TINABE.com, and I look forward to connecting. Again, the link for my workshop is in the chat.